I remember the exact moment she asked me. We were in the bath, she was playing with her rubber duck, and she just looked up at me with those big serious eyes and said, "Mom, where did my dad come from?" And I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of all the places and all the moments in the world, she chose this one. Bubbles everywhere, rubber duck in her hand, completely matter of fact, like she was asking me what's for dinner or whether the sky was blue or whether cats could swim. Just casually dropping the biggest question of her little life right there in the middle of bath time, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, like it was nothing. Her name is Maya. She was 7 at the time. And she had this very particular way of asking the hardest questions in the most ordinary moments, in the car when I was trying to navigate, at the grocery store in the cereal aisle, right before bed when I was already half asleep and had absolutely nothing left in me. Like she deliberately saved them up and waited for me to be slightly off guard before she let them out into the world. I sat down on the edge of the bathtub, took a slow breath, and said, "What made you think about that today?" She shrugged, with her whole body, the way only 7-year-olds can shrug, completely unbothered, completely relaxed. Sadie at school has a dad who picks her up every Friday. And Jake has 2 dads. And Emma has a dad and a stepdad, which I think is a lot of dads. And today in class we drew our families, and I didn't know what to draw, so I just drew me and you and left the rest blank. She said it completely calmly. No sadness behind it, no accusation, no big feeling. Just a simple observation, the way kids notice things and name them out loud without any filter, without understanding that some observations land heavier than others. I looked at her little face, wet hair, soap bubbles on her chin, total innocence in her eyes, and felt something move through my chest. Not panic exactly. More like the feeling you get when you have been waiting for something for a very long time and then suddenly it is right in front of you and you realize that no amount of preparation actually prepares you for the real thing. Because I had been preparing for this conversation since before she was even born. Literally since before she existed. I had practiced it in my head 100 times, in the shower, on long drives, lying in bed at night staring at the ceiling. I had the words ready. I had the tone ready. I knew exactly what I wanted to say and how I wanted her to feel when I said it. And then I looked at her sitting there in the bubbles, rubber duck in hand, waiting patiently for my answer, and every single prepared sentence I had ever rehearsed just disappeared. Gone. Like they had never existed at all. So I took another breath. And I started with the truth. I told her that she didn't have a dad the way Sadie or Jake had a dad. And that it wasn't because something went wrong, or because someone left, or because anyone didn't want her. I told her it was actually the opposite of all of that. She existed because I wanted her so much, so completely and so deeply, that I found a way to have her on my own. She tilted her head to one side, the way she always did when something didn't quite compute yet. "What do you mean, on your own?" And this is where I had to slow down and really find the right words. Because she was 7. And I didn't want to give her a fairy tale she would have to unlearn later. But I also didn't want to overwhelm her. I wanted to give her something real and honest, something she could hold on to and grow into. So I said, "You know how to make a cake, you need ingredients, right? Flour and eggs and sugar and butter. And if you're missing even one ingredient, the cake just can't happen. Well, to make a person you also need ingredients. And I had most of them, but I was missing one. And there are kind people in the world who give that missing ingredient to moms who need it. Moms who really, really want a baby but don't have a partner. And that's what happened with you. A kind person helped. And because of that, you happened." She was quiet for a moment, turning it over in her mind, checking it from different angles the way she did with everything. Then she said, "So a kind person helped make me?" "Yes," I said. "Exactly that." She picked up her rubber duck and looked at it for a second. Then looked back at me. "Do you know who it was?" I told her I didn't. That the person had chosen to help without sharing their name, anonymously, like leaving a gift on someone's doorstep and walking away before they open the door. She thought about that carefully. And then she said, like a secret helper. Yeah, I said. Exactly like a secret helper. And the way her face changed, the way her eyes got just a little brighter, like this thing she had been trying to understand had clicked into place in a way that felt not sad but actually kind of wonderful. I will never forget that moment for as long as I live. She seemed genuinely okay with all of it. More than okay, she looked almost proud of it, like being made with the help of a secret person was something special rather than something missing. And I felt this slow warm wave of relief move through me, because that right there, that little shift in how she saw it, was everything I had spent years hoping for. But then she asked the question I wasn't expecting. She put down her rubber duck, looked at me very directly, and said, "Mom, were you scared? To do it alone?" And I completely stopped. Because in all the times I had imagined this conversation, in all the versions I had rehearsed over the years, nobody had ever asked me that. Not my mom, not my closest friends, not my doctor. They had asked me if I was sure, if I had thought it through, if I understood how hard it would be. But nobody had ever just asked if I was scared. And here was my 7-year-old. In the bathtub. Cutting straight through everything to the one thing I had never fully said out loud. I told her the truth. I told her yes, I was scared. That I was 34 years old and I had wanted a baby for so long that it had become this quiet ache I carried with me everywhere, to weddings, to birthday parties, to ordinary Tuesday evenings when I came home to a quiet apartment and made dinner for one and told myself the timing just wasn't right yet. I told her I had waited. For the right person, for the right moment, for life to arrange itself the way I had always imagined it would. And at some point I realized I was waiting for something that might never come. And the thing I actually wanted, more than a perfect plan, more than anything else, was her. A child. A family. Even if it was just the two of us. So I stopped waiting. And I made a choice. The scariest thing I had ever done, and also the most certain I had ever felt about anything in my life. She listened to every single word without interrupting. Which for Maya was truly remarkable. When I finished she was quiet for a moment. And then she said, "So you chose me. Before you even knew me." And I said, "I chose the idea of you. And then you showed up, and you were so much better than the idea." She smiled. That big, slow, deeply satisfied smile that started small and just kept growing until it took over her whole face. Then she slid down into the bubbles and was quiet again for a moment. Then she looked up and said, "I'm glad you didn't wait anymore." And I had to look away. Just for a second. At the wall. Blink a few times. Get it together. Because she was 7 and I didn't want to cry in front of her and have to explain that too on the same evening. "Me too, Bug," I said, when I trusted my voice again. "Me too." She played with her duck for another minute. Then looked up one more time and said, "Do you think the secret helper knows he helped make someone really good?" And I laughed, a real laugh, from somewhere deep and warm and completely unexpected. And I said, "I think if he knew, he'd be really, really happy." She nodded. Satisfied. Case closed. And picked up her duck again. I washed her hair, she complained the water was too cold. I adjusted it, she said too hot. I said it was exactly the same temperature, she said it definitely wasn't, and just like that we were back to normal. Back to the ordinary Tuesday evening it had always been, before the biggest conversation of her little life had happened right there between the bubbles and the rubber duck. 5. I wrapped her in her towel, carried her to her room, put her in her star pajamas, and she climbed into bed and pulled her blanket up to her chin with great ceremony the way she did every single night. I turned off the big light, turned on the small lamp, and sat on the edge of her bed. She looked up and said, "Mom?" "Yeah?" "I think our family is really nice." I tucked the blanket around her shoulders, smoothed her hair back from her forehead, and kissed her right between the eyebrows. Our thing, always our thing, since the very first day. I think so too, I said. I think we're the best family I know. She closed her eyes, still smiling that slow proud smile. I turned off the lamp, pulled the door almost closed, leaving just a sliver of hallway light the way she liked it. And I stood there in the hallway for a moment, my hand still on the door, just breathing. Then I went to make myself a cup of tea, sat down at the kitchen table in the quiet, and smiled to myself for a long time.